So in terms of dart manipulation, so what you're doing is in 3 dimensions, if I have a piece of fabric here and I'm to place it along here, you can see it's straight. And what I need to do is I need to catch some, essentially kind of dart wedge sort of shape to create, to make it so that the garment will fit around the bust, you know. And that's where we get this shape from, you know. Now the thing about that is this amount here, that is our fitting, to make it fit into a 3-dimensional shape, can be moved around. I can take this shape, this amount that I have, and I can move it around. So I can move it, say, here into this position, and I still have a nice shape. It's still fitting my block. So I cut that, and I can cut down a little bit here. So that's kind of going, do you see the way it's sitting nicely on the shoulder now? And then if I hold it there, it's sitting along the side. So my point is that it's making a turn here and it's going to fit the body. Now, if I was taking a pattern from that, I'd have to draw around and draw along my shoulder and draw along my armhole and draw along my side seam, yeah, and my waist. That's what I'd be doing. But for this one, I'm just trying to show you what we're going to do on the flat pattern. I'm trying to show you it 3-dimensionally first. So we're going like this, and so then we want to move it over here to, say, the side seam to be a French dart, you know. So I'm just maneuvering it over here, so the position of the dart can change.
So French dart is an angled dart, is it? Or
Yeah, the French dart is it's the, you know, yeah, coming from here.
Okay.
So it comes up like that. All right, and then I can move it into being an underarm dart. It doesn't sit so well until I cut away the excess, so you can see it's not really sitting terribly well, but it's to give you the idea that it still is curving around the bust and the body, and that, you know, and also that I could push all of it up into the shoulder, so I could put all of it up there, and then it would be a large dart from that point. And that's still, if I can get it to go, you know, going around and fitting making a 3-dimensional shape for the body, do you know? So one wedge shape taken from wherever we take it could go into the neck. Makes this whole thing fit on the body. It's kind of really interesting. The thing is, we can separate it out. So to get our block like this, where there's some here and some here, you know, it's a very large dart if we just do it all in one. So I could kind of pin a bit here and a bit here, and that's what you mean by more balanced, maybe. And again, that's a real kind of rough pinning of it, but you get the idea that wedge shape and that wedge shape, and it still creates. So you can divide it in 2, you could divide it into 3 or 4 or 5, you know. It doesn't demonstrate very well until you cut off the excess and really, you know, push it all down well and everything. And what I want to do is just to show you that that's what's happening in 3 dimensions. But what we're going to do is, if you can understand dart manipulation on 2 dimensions, it's very quick. It's quicker. So if you wanted to change your position of the dart, if you were to come and drape that and put it here and then be moving all this fabric here and then getting your whole thing around it, you can do it that way. But if you have your block already and it's there, and say you want a French dart, you know, you can do it very quickly and on the flat pattern. And if we say want a French dart, which is from here, we just draw our line. We simply draw the line from where we want it to the bust point. That is a cutting line, and we will then cut and fold. You have to trace around it. I cut it, now it's better to cut the whole thing out, but you actually don't even have to. I'm going to cut along my cutting line here. And this is the magic. Okay, I want the French dart, draw on my line, trace it, cut and close there. Close this dart. And that's how it opens. And then you draw a cutting line from where you want it, cut it out, close that over, and that transfers the same angle, but it might be a different length, and this will end up being a different width than that. So it's not about the measurement, okay? So it's been transferred. So there you go. That is now, if you're to trace that off and trace that, that's a French dart. So if you were, once you start to get very large darts, if you were doing your seam allowance, you'd come around, and you wouldn't do that as a huge dart, it's just so big. You'd come around with your seam allowance and you'd come in with your seam allowance around like that, by the way. So again, you can do the same thing again, just we can choose a different position anywhere. So say I want to go from the neck line, do the same thing, come down, draw our scissors. This is the cutting line. We're cutting in this direction, and you can trace over that and cut it out and cut down. And essentially that's your exercise. What I want you to do is do it a few times. That's why I've given you the handouts, because I want you to do one like mine where you trace it off, draw your cutting line, cut, spread. That's your second construction. So construction 1 just has a line on it, one line, that's all. Construction 2 is a cut and spread. And then your final pattern piece is this traced off with seam allowance, your labeling and everything on it. So it's it's a simple enough draft, this, but there's a lot of theory behind it. And what I'd like you to do one all the way through, but what I'd like you to do is practice and do several more. So that's why I gave you those, because then you can literally just actually cut these. Like just draw a line and cut it out and cut it, and then draw a different line here, cut it. So it's a quick way to get in your notes quite a few examples. Then try something advanced with these. This is a full front, so it's the, not just the one side of the block. We flipped the block and we have a full front, and that's for an asymmetric one. So try putting one cutting line here and one here, and just see. So you end up with some of those interesting ones that we saw in the PowerPoint, So it's just to, we're not making these, you don't have to worry about how hard it is to sew, You could do a curved line. Don't do crazy wiggle lines, because you'll notice if you do a crazy wiggle line and you try and cut it, they start to overlap on each other. Just slight curves maybe here and there, or angles, So none of this like up, down, that's kind of crazy. But you could do, you could do one angle, or, a slight curve or something like that, and you won't get into any trouble. Okay, so yeah, so I'll do one more here. I'll cut and open it so you have a couple of examples, but you don't need to follow mine. I haven't given you one to do, I haven't prescribed one to do. So what I want you to do is do a dart manipulation anywhere you like, okay, along that block, so you can show me that you can do it, and trace it off, and then spend some time doing some creative and interesting different ones, and you can literally keep them in your notebook as well. Don't forget to trace your notch points always, and don't forget to label your center front lines. So just when you're practicing the tracing, to get your good practices in there with all the things. So if I do this one, I'll just cut down, and I'll do it again and show you. It's better really if you cut them right out. I'm just doing this for speed purposes here, I'll cut them out in a minute. So this one I've cut here, and I'm going to close this. So in terms of closing it, I pinch it up and I pinch right along that line. And then I put my finger down the middle so that I can kind of close it over. And that seems to work very nicely. And then it's opened out up here. And for you, you'll be sticking this down onto another piece of paper underneath. All right? Some people like to do this. They like to color that in because it makes it more obvious the bit that's not part of the. Do you know? That is the dart. That part. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll do that. I'll do it because it only takes me a sec. I'll show you exactly how to do that. So if I was doing, okay, the shoulder and the waist. So this one, so I've done these two already, but if I was to look at taking this dart, which is large, and I want to have a dart into the waist, but also into the shoulder, I'm going to reduce and maybe fold this only halfway. So I reduce this dart and some will open up there. So I'll show you how that looks. So I'm going to draw a line from the shoulder down, and this is my cutting line, and that's my point. The notch really makes it so that you know where exactly to go from. And in this case, I'm going to cut down, but I'm not going to close, I'm not going to fold over my whole dart. So I go like, okay, I'm cutting there, and I'm only going to fold a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to crease here. So I'm creasing here, but maybe I'm not closing all the way over. That would mean I have no dart now down here. So I can say find a halfway point and crease that. So now I have this much of a dart here and that much of a dart there, so I now have two. So that's a few examples, and you try your own one.